Welcome back to Leadership in AI, the show that uncovers how AI leaders build technologies that transform industries. Today, I'm your host, Malti, the CEO and founder of Bio, a company that helps organizations build strong data foundations and scale AI for real decision making. Today, we have with us Vijaykan Naradur, the co-founder and CEO of KnowledgeWords, an enterprise AI platform that helps global organizations unlock insight from unstructured data at scale. Vijaykan's journey spans continents, a deep academic grounding in computer science, and multiple AI ventures. So he is uniquely positioned to talk about what it takes to lead amid rapid innovation. Vijay, truly a pleasure to have you here. So, welcome to our show. Walk us a little bit about your personal journey and about KnowledgeWords focus, how it has taken unstructured data, context, and enterprise readiness.
First of all, thank you so much, Malti, for having me here. I truly appreciate that. It's an honor to be on your podcast. So thank you for that. So personal journey, I mean, okay, so you rightly use the word grounded in the academic world. That's exactly who I was for a while. And before 2013 hit, and my personal project, which I was working at the University of Kentucky, that personal project got a lot of recognition. Was trying to build two basic algorithms. One was for sentiment analysis, and the other one was for text summarization. So these algorithms were pretty good. I mean, keep in mind, we did not even have the concepts of transformers, right? So pure NLP and machine learning based. Everybody was excited. I wanted to do something with it. I just didn't know what. One thing led to the other. The prototype was built. Then I ended up moving around the world from Lisbon, Portugal, Paris, France, Santiago, Chile, then life brought me back to the US, Kansas City. We were funded by Techstars. This was for a company called Stride.ai. Before it was cool to have AI in your domain. So we had an unbelievably good ride, and certain regulation came into effect in Europe, and which affected pretty us in a very negative manner. And we had to kind of like, we thought of shutting down that particular venture. And that's what gave us the opportunity to start Knowledge was exactly about a year ago in Jan of 2025. So in Stride.ai, what we did was we focused on unstructured data for the tasks of when you talk about data processing, what exactly do you do? You either enter data, you extract data, or you compare data. And previous technology had limited us to that. So any workflow that dealt with unstructured data and the operations were data entry, extraction, and comparison, we had the foundational platform to go ahead and implement those particular use cases. At Stride.ai, we built localized machine learning models to do that. Now comes LLMs, and our idea was, hey, yes, just use LLMs and make the magic happen. Unfortunately, LLMs aren't as good as people think them to be because you need to do a lot of grunt work. And that's what inspired us to start KnowledgeWorks. And we carried out a bunch of research, and then we came to what we do today. So today, if I describe KnowledgeWorks, it would be a full stack AI platform which serves as an infrastructure layer for enterprise AI. So in today's shape and form, that's what it stands for. So yes,
Very
Malti.
nice. Very nice, Vijay, because, taking from your previous company, and of course, the economies sometimes do have an effect on the how we operate in companies, so taking all those learnings from stride.ai and applying that in knowledge words is very good. And in terms of, especially when you brought up this point about how enterprise sits on massive volumes of pdfs, contracts, sops, and reports, AI pilots usually often fail not because of models but because context is missing.
Correct. Correct.
Knowledge was positions pretty well itself as infrastructure and not just an AI layer. So,
Correct.
was there a moment where you chose depth over speed, even if it slowed early adoption?
100%. We were very clear that we were going to put the money where our mouth was, right? So we invested our own money in the past 1 year. We were very fortunate that we do have three design partners who are clients, and we have multiple years of contracts. But we on purpose chose to be slow rather than going head full scale with marketing about announcing to the world what we are doing. Rather, we took a very calibrated approach. So first of all, what we found was very interesting that everybody was talking about the pipeline, right? So a typical pipeline would look like there is input. Now, unstructured data is in the form of PDFs, reports, and all the things that you mentioned from various sources. Now, that comes into some kind of tooling. The tooling, either it could be specialized to vertical or could be a general purpose tooling, let's say OCR. And now that feeds the data into large language models and you get the answer, and that puts an end to the pipeline, right? That's how people looked at it. So, one very interesting question is which is the best LLM, or which is the best tooling, or which combination works the best? The honest answer is there is no real answer you can give because everything depends on the scenario, what you're trying to solve. So, for us, it is not a tooling or a pipeline problem. It is definitely not a model problem. It is a problem that is purely driven by context. Because if you are building a workflow which has to illustrate once on the demo, by all means do this. But enterprises work differently. In our experience of over 10 years, enterprises rely on context. If your team has worked on it, that work should benefit you. If somebody in your organization has discovered something new, that should benefit you. You're going to reduce redundant work. You're going to promote cross learning. Now, these are the foundational things which were missing because the context was missing, memory was missing, optimization was missing. So, we came out with these three tuples: context, memory, and optimization for your pipeline and made the entire system interoperable, meaning your toolings can be swapped in and swapped out, your models could be swapped in and swapped out, and everything else remains the same. So that's the whole idea behind what we are doing at.
So, on that note, Vijay, right, how do you think about your tech stack at Knowledgeverse, especially as you were mentioning balancing LLMs, context graphs, and memory and enterprise system integrations?
Okay, so before the tech stack, right? Like, let's understand how things are architected. That's a bigger clue than only choosing the tech stack. So for tech stack, it's straightforward, right? Choose any vector database of your choice. I mean, RAG companies were very popular. Now you can skip RAGs and look at things in a different manner. So
Right.
that's about a fairly straightforward, and enough and more work has been done. But let's focus a little bit on the architecture part, right? Now, what happens is when you go ahead and get started with the workflow at the very first run. So you need to have certain static context, right? Your memory and optimization parts will be at null state because what are you going to optimize when you have nothing? When you set it up, look at it in this manner. Now, the static context, what is that? Organizational handbooks, what domains they are in, what is allowed, what is not allowed, certain policies, procedures, so on
Yeah.
and so forth, right?
Right.
What we describe as the enterprise ontology, which also includes organizational chart, the hierarchy, who is reporting to who, what is allowed for this level, what is not allowed for this level. The third comes is the user profile, right? What is this particular user who is going to be using this workflow being allowed to do? What is it that user cannot do? And that's very crucial also, right? Because you're enforcing stringent guidelines. And lastly, you leave it to the user preferences. Oh, I want long answers. I want short answers. So all those things you need to indicate and set up. Now, how do you do that? Like you upload raw data and we are able to build context. And one thing which I want to tell all the audience here is that context graphs are not necessarily your traditional computer science graph, right? With edges and nodes. They are essentially representatives of the five W's in H: what, where, when, why, who, and how. And in addition to that, it also captures the relationship. So you are able to express the traceability, the decision traces, and on what grounds certain decisions were taken and actions were taken. So setting up this is a bigger part in my view rather than just choosing the tech stack. For the tech stack, I mean, look, a lot of vibe coding methods are becoming popular, but we strongly recommend Python because it's got phenomenal support.
Right.
Any of your cloud service providers are good enough. And I think that this is the best time probably you can exist for developing technology. You don't need the depth. You could still do it, relying on your coding assistants, I would say.
Yeah, no, that is something consistent I've heard from a lot of founders is it is much easier to code at this time and age than it was some time ago.
I would say 3 years ago.
Yes. The fundamentals of coding and of course logic always plays a huge role in the way you want to like structure the programming. But then I think by when we look at the technical specific nature of it, I think it's much more easier to code right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But logic is not replaceable, right? I mean,
Yes.
I figured out I was helping somebody recently. So one of the challenges was that this person was using, I mean, like regular vibe coding methods to illustrate a simple algorithm, which takes an input data and it takes another input data and compares the similarity. And then if it is similar, executes this. If it is not similar, executes something else. But what an important piece of information in the logical flow was missing was if you take an input question, you had to normalize it, represent it semantically. You had to take the second question, represent it semantically in a normalized form, and compare those two normalized forms, right? Adding that one extra step was not a biggest thing in terms of programmatical way of executing it. It was all about logical thinking and flow, right? Now, that
Yeah.
is something you probably can't teach people that easily.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So on that note, uh, just since we are almost into the show, Vijay, can you like explain exactly what does knowledge was like? Take a use case, very simple use case, and explain how does it unpack itself.
Absolutely. So our policy, our whole vision is very simple, right? Build very, very strong tech. Now, illustrate the interest by showcasing that it works on a real use case. Probably build one, and then let the customers take the technology and build it themselves because we're going to make it as simple as assembling the Lego blocks, right? That's our whole philosophy. First, build very, very strong tech, which we believe we have done. But if you don't have a use case, you probably don't have a business. You have got strong technology. But we were very fortunate that having learned how enterprises work and how what are the use cases that really help, we were able to discover certain early use cases. So one such use cases, which we have already worked for more than a year with a very large European pharma company, I could talk about is clinical research reporting.
Hmm.
So let me explain what exactly is the problem statement. The problem statement is for a pharma company, it is very, very important to go through a quality check of two kinds: structural integrity of the document and the qualitative contents of the document, which should be matching with ICH guidelines and certain internal additions to that. Now, you need to apply these guidelines, ensure that these documents match those guidelines before you can turn it into FDA or other such regulators. Now, the problem is these are PDF documents. These can range from 300 to 5,000 pages long. It's becoming very, very tricky to go ahead and do it manually, right? Like imagine the average turnaround time is 23 working days to go through these quality checks. And the chances of this document actually getting accepted is no more than 70%. Now, here's the interesting part. If you don't get the submission correct, it will not only be rejected, you will also be levied a fine, and it also induces a 90 days cooling off period, which means your time to market as a pharma company will be hit pretty badly. They don't care
Hmm.
about small fines of few $1,000s. That's perfectly
Right.
fine for a large pharma company. Now, how did we solve that problem? We figured out like the ICH guidelines can be expressed in the rule book in an unstructured manner. Use that as a fundamental manner to upload these documents, compare it, identify the issues, fix it if possible. If not, identify the exact page numbers and locations where these 25 checkpoints are either hit or miss. If they're missing, you clearly point out like, hey, I couldn't fix it, which means the end user is now able to pinpoint like what is wrong and go ahead and fix it. One big problem with enterprises adopting LLMs is that they don't want to babysit every step that LLM takes, which means you're losing all the benefits, the cost benefits, the efficiency gains are lost because now you are doing double the amount of work because these systems are not very cheap. In
Right.
addition to that, you have human labor, so it just makes it not a viable option. Maybe that is one of the reasons a lot of enterprises are the use cases in enterprises is failing. So this is how we were able to solve. And as a result, the turnaround time was brought down to just 5 working days, and the submission acceptance went up to 88%, which is substantial. because where is
Right.
70% and where is 88%. So that is substantial.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that case with your clients, and I'm sure they might be super happy
They are
with this
certainly are.
outcome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, on that note, Vijay, you brought up a good point about a lot of these OpenAI APIs to also validate a lot of these classification of documents and all that, right? So, what is it that in knowledge was you're using something proprietary? My understanding, based on what you're saying,
For sure.
is how would you kind of explain that to our audience?
Absolutely. I'll not only explain, I'll try to even illustrate with a simple problem.
That's even better.
So, yeah, I would be happy to do my screen share and you can record and hopefully the audience understand.
Yep.
So, a lot of times when people criticize the models, they don't understand like models are great. Okay. It's not a model problem. It's an engineering problem. Now, think about uploading hundreds of pages of a scanned document into OpenAI or ChatGPT. Now, I know in certain advanced tiers they will work, but there is a lot of engineering load that the systems have to take. But when you call it using an API and you assume you can send the entire load, it doesn't work. So unless you're carrying out certain engineering steps ahead of time, it won't yield outcomes. Allow me to actually illustrate. So I will take the liberty to share my screen and hopefully everybody is able to see it then.
Yep.
Uh,
Go
uh,
for it. Vijay, picture speaks thousand words.
okay. So, all right. Are you able to see my screen now?
It's coming up. Yep. There you go. We can see.
There you go. So I have a very simple document. Now, this is a scan document. It's called a simplified prospectus, right? It is about less than 60, 70 pages, right? Okay. So now I'll show you something very interesting. Now, you take the same document, right? You go ahead and upload it. And if you were to, let's say, ask a question of this sort, right? Now, I'll tell you the problem. You will get some answers. Okay. You see, right, what it did? It is
Yeah.
answering a complete wrong question
Right. So it is not aware
because
of the
it's
context.
assuming it pulling up the data from the internet, right?
Sure.
It is not answering regarding the document because this document processing is an expensive step because you have to digitalize all the pages of the document before you answer. So every answer here has no bearing on what was the content of the document,
Right.
right? It's asking, it's giving you completely different answer. Now, if you were to showcase the same stuff and I am uploading the same document and I'm asking the same question, right?
And this is in knowledge verse,
It is a
correct?
knowledge verse, right? So you get the answer super quickly, but
Right.
you also are able to go to the source of the information,
Wow.
right? Now, I mean, if you ask a sort of silly question, right? What was now if everything works correctly, you probably should get the answer like this. It's not even sending that information to the LLMs because it figured out there is zero match. You will never
Yep.
get hallucination. But
Yeah.
here in a system of this sort, you're likely to get wrong answers. It is again not a model problem. It's simply what I call as the engineering problem because a bunch of steps were skipped and that's what
Yes.
caused it.
Yes. Yeah. No, no, no. Thank you for sharing that, Vijay. That's a very appropriate example and very tied to exactly what you're explaining. So, in our work at VIO, we see AI success tied closely to data maturity and decision readiness. How do you assess whether a client is ready to extract value from AI versus still needing foundational data work?
This is a very good question. And here is what, as an AI practitioner, I would personally suggest, right? Now,
Right.
a lot of companies around the world are under pressure saying, "Oh, we need AI initiative. What's your AI strategy?" Before you formulate an AI strategy, you need to understand why you need AI, what kind of data you have, what kind of matrix you're going to put in place to measure efficiency gain, time savings, cost savings, or some second order gains. So if you haven't defined all these, what's the point of having this kind of a system where you're going ahead and you are going to implement AI to do what? So here are certain steps I would recommend. to you and all the AI practitioners that would want to work with enterprises. So, step one, in terms of data maturity, that I would put it as the second step. First step I would go ahead and ask is, what is your vision with regards to AI? Are you trying to
Mhm.
do more with same, more with less? Or do you see that if you apply AI, what is the one KPI that you're going to maximize? Is it profits? Is it time saving, cost saving? Because if you don't understand their objective behind which they're using AI, you're never going to get it wrong. And that's perhaps the reason why you saw the MIT report said 95% POCs are failing in production. This could be one of the reasons. The
Okay.
second thing is about data maturity. Now, you even the good part with AI is if you have unstructured data, you could bring in reasonable amount of structure. You could do a lot of pre-processing. But if you don't even know what data you're going to operate, what constraints you're going to put on data, what data can be shared, what cannot be shared, where what is the function of human in the loop? Is the human in the loop going to supervise every step, which is a recipe for disaster? Or is the human in the loop confident to say that I'm only going to see it this way? So if you don't architect the workflow, it won't work. So I would say that objective, data maturity, then the architecture of the workflow. And finally, what is the growth plan? Are you going to have one linear workflow implemented just for the sake of it? In that case, you probably just want to stitch things together. You don't want to go in depth. If a company has this idea of, no, this is going to be my pilot project. If it succeeds, I'm going to roll it out as an enterprise wide strategy. Only then does it make sense, because if you are going to apply AI in silos, you might get good results, impressive results perhaps, but it's going to be very limited. You're not going to be able to take use case by use case and replicate the success story, because if you don't have something that is underpinning this, the entire strategy might be vague. That's how I would look at things.
So, just tying this back to your client in Europe example.
Uh,
So, I think you might have vetted through the real use case or the problem statement that the pharma company is facing. One is actually going through all those research and drug launch
Correct.
papers that you wanted to go through. So here, in terms of this, is more of unstructured data. Is where you so generally with unstructured data, sometimes you can flatten it and get it structured, and then drive a lot more questions on it as well to really understand the data quality which can surface. Right?
Oh, for sure.
Have you encountered anything of that kind with your clients?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. Another good test is right. Like, so our strategy, as I told you, is build a very, very strong tech, illustrate it works on a particular use case, probably build that particular use case and then let them build, right? Or if they understand the tech, at least suggest. So I'll give you an example with the same client. We ended up working on a use case which is not very far from this objectively, but the function was very different. We started working with their global medical affairs team. So the problem statement was slightly different, but the objective was not very different. The problem statement in this particular case was the global medical affairs team was going ahead and assisting doctors by creating presentations using research and other materials. So some of the work was on the web, the reference work. Some of it was in PDF, and some of it was in PPTs, which was spread all over. So one thing we understood was this mechanism would just make it chaotic for a new user, forget about AI, to go ahead and start doing. So one simple trick we did was we said, even if you're using all of these different formats, which you invariably can change, you should have a repository where you have documents in the form of PDF and PPT, as well as all the links to the web sources. Because if you don't cross reference them, how is it you're expecting the AI to go ahead and go through these sources, cross reference, verify if facts and figures and the flow is correct or not? So that's one simple change we tweaked. Because one of the challenges they were facing is the data was spread all over. And the point is, if it's spread all over, chances of making mistakes are higher. And they had a 2i, 4i, and a 6i verification system to get to close to 95, 97% accuracy before they went ahead and presented it to the doctors. So we literally eliminated the 2i check because the person who created the presentation got things sorted out more than 95% of the times. And the next person who ran the QA was like, oh, yeah, I got it. And we had almost close to zero changes on the test environment for the third degree of quality check. So it really, really benefited. But again, the trick was making sure the data availability. It's not just not the data quality. Sometimes, to add to your point, you do need to, let's say, digitalize the documents, organize them more in a connected manner rather than looking at them as, a whole set of entire document. How do you process? Now it's an engineering problem. Are you going to use chunking? Are you going to use hierarchical chunking? Are you going to use, like, a regular chunking? So there are 13 or 14 chunking mechanisms. So that kind of pre-processing should be possible as AI practitioners. But even to do that, what about data availability? If you don't have data availability in a predictable manner, how do you fix this problem? So that's
Right,
what we
right,
solved.
right. Okay. So you indexed a lot of these files and maintain somewhat of a lineage kind of
Correct.
to all of those. Okay,
That is
cool.
spot on.
Yeah, yeah. So one other thing is many platforms focus on document search or a RAGs style retrieval.
Correct.
Where does knowledge was intentionally go deeper than that?
Okay, so now RAGs are not something bad, and there are, again, more than 10 different methods of implementing RAGs. All right. So what we did was initially we were only building the middleware until last year, September, October. We were primarily building the middleware, right? And it worked really well. So we knew which kind of RAGs and which kind of chunking mechanisms were great. What we realized was there was no one fit size fits all. Every use case was unique. Every use case had to be done in a different manner. Instead of competing against with other RAG companies, what we did was we have a system now that if you have a way of implementing a new RAG, we will support that. Because for us, tooling and tech of that kind is swappable. So we created an interoperable platform which allows multiple input sources, multiple types of input, multiple types of tooling. Like, let's say somebody says Amazon's Tesseract is the best. Somebody says DeepSeek OCR is the best. We don't care. Whatever you decide, you can go ahead. We can recommend based on our experience. But if you're comfortable with something, you've already subscribed to something, you don't need to break the architecture. You just swap in and swap out. Then you choose the RAG principles. We are fine with that. Then whatever output you need, you choose to do that. Platform without not just being interoperable also lies on the context, the memory, and the optimization. So the optimization part, right? So we published a paper which is going to be out in mid-February called iCheck. It stands for Item Potence Check. Now,
Okay.
iCheck allows optimality in terms of usage of tokens, usage of the context, usage of reduction in latency, and high levels of accuracy. So it does all of this.
Okay.
Similarly, we did something for maintaining the structural integrity of the document, similar to how a LaTeX representation of regular document is. So we have all these systems. So the underpinning points is context, memory, and optimization. So we would never say we have the best RAG. If you have the best, bring it in. It will take you no more than an hour to bring that in. So we have made the platform really interoperable. So
Yeah.
that's the secret what we have.
No, that will be great, Vijay. Let us know the link to the paper. We are happy to put it in the description.
Yeah, yeah. I will be happy to share the links. Maybe after this conversation, I'll share all the links with you. So maybe that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, if
absolutely.
somebody is also interested, we recently released the first version of our SDK. Anybody who signs up, we're happy to give free credits. We call one transaction as a credit. So everybody by default gets 500 credits. And if you want more, reach out to us. We're happy to support the community that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Actually, I'm sure the engineering community will be interested and will hop on to try out your APIs for sure.
Absolutely.
And now, so building and scaling something this ambitious isn't smooth. So let's talk about the ups and downs in your journey.
Oh boy, if I had a dollar for every ups and downs, I would never need to raise capital, right? I would be so rich. That's the thing about founders, right? I mean, even in our previous journey, like when we started, believe it or not, I'm originally from Bangalore, India, and I just finished my grad school in the US. I spent enough number of years in. first at the University of Georgia, then at the University of Kentucky. So I, believe it or not, I started my entrepreneurial journey in Lisbon, Portugal, right, with zero Portuguese language skills. And I'd never been an entrepreneur. I was an academic. I was pretty good at research and teaching, I suppose. Then, being in a foreign country all by yourself where everybody else is speaking Portuguese except you, it was challenge number one. Were able to somehow overcome, like, established trust in a country which doesn't feel as comfortable or isn't as open as the States is. So it became a bit of a challenge, but then I was able to overcome, establish. We got the best startup award back in the day. That gave us the impetus, and we ended up in France from Portugal. Again, very different business culture, not a country which easily trusts you. Had to overcome that, and then I had a personal loss. I lost my father in between this transition. So
Sorry to hear
there
that.
was so many challenges, right? Like, I mean, I can write a book perhaps, and every time you get a customer, you're delighted. Then something goes wrong, you're like, oh, how do I fix it? So, for entrepreneurs who are thinking that, once you raise capital, once you have customers, it's going to be a smooth sailing, under wrong impression. It's only going to get worse from that point
Yeah,
onward.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but there is this natural delight of doing things, right? And again, like, last couple of years ago, there was a regulation that affected us. How do you deal with your established business getting hit so badly? You will want to give up. But this is the thing, right? When you're passionate about what you do, when you really believe that you're making a difference, you develop that natural zeal and resilience. And, I think that's what makes you a good entrepreneur. And then again, right, like doing something exciting in the times we're living in. So maybe this opportunity will never come back again, right? So
Yeah.
that's how you keep yourself
Definitely,
motivated.
as that's a very, very, very interesting journey, Vijay, and most entrepreneurs can relate to that. And no matter what, yes, we all are judged by what kind of successes we put out. But for something we need to really give a pat on our back is the internal shift and the success it brings us to kind of demonstrate that consistency and passion for sure.
For sure. I mean, you become a very different person, right?
Yes.
Sometimes the moment you become a little heavy with success, failure is up there. It will
Yeah.
it will normalize
Yeah,
you.
I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, the failures I feel are the best opportunities by itself. Taking a little bit of I would say, a spiritual bent of mind and not getting too attached to the outcomes and having a long term vision really can help us survive in this roller coaster ride, I would say.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can plan your outcomes, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you don't even work hard, or you don't deserve, but you get better outcomes. Sometimes you work really, really hard, but you
Yes,
don't. But
absolutely.
that's how it works, right? I mean, things
Yeah.
normalize in the end, right? If you have done a good job, you
Yeah.
feel good about it, right? That's it. You don't need to feel, oh, everybody else is getting outcome, and stop comparing, right? These are the kind of
Absolutely.
spiritual lessons you learn over a period of time, and then you become a better person. That's at least my hope is.
Right, right. So, on this journey, what do you advise to students? And do you have a message for engineers, community, and investors? And what is the future outlook for knowledge was? I think I
Okay,
packed a lot of questions, but yeah, feel free to
let me
unpack it.
let me try to break it down. First, for students and engineers, I mean, this is probably again the best time to build something. The time to build, let's say, a POC. When I started back in 2013, 14, as a fresh grad student out of college, I think the POC time was 6 months. Now, if you're going to take anything more than a week for a proof of concept, there's something wrong with you, right? Like, the cost to build, time to build, the resources required to build something is really, really low, which means you're only going to be limited by your own ideas, by your own ambition. If you have a good idea, please implement, right? Whether you're a student, whether you're an engineer working for a multinational or a small startup, or wherever you are, or even if you don't have the background, all you need is a solid idea, the resolved mind to go ahead and build it. There is enough and more resources, and you can build it. So that's the number one piece of advice. Second, before you build, start thinking this way, right? Like, what is the problem that you're solving? And don't think that your solution is the greatest, right? Or if you're the most unique solution, you're more likely going to be the only wrong person doing that. So if you are solving the right problem, somebody else would have thought about it. So try to figure out and validate the problems and the problem statements and see what's the frequency of occurrence of the problem. Is this a problem that's going to be like Halley's Comet once every 75 years? Please don't solve it.
Yeah, right.
Is it a problem that occurs every single day? Go
Yeah.
ahead and solve it. So frequency
Right.
of the problem statement. So that's exactly how I would look at it. Technology, I don't want to give you any inputs because you guys are going to figure it out.
Mhm.
For investors, right? I mean, everybody's talking about AI, and I know investors don't want to be left behind. I know investors are looking at rapid speed, but is it fair to kind of expect something tangible to come out of like 2 months of work, 3 months of work? So look at maturity in terms of what the founders have done. What kind of actual research has been done? Do they have the academic, strength to go ahead and build what they're promising? And also look at, once what the money is given for. Is it going to be for build purposes or is it going to be for scaling purposes? I mean, it's if the build is already done, you already know the likelihood of such a company failing is lesser because if you're going to go ahead and bet on horses or like very early stage, maybe it's a big risk. I mean that's at least how I would look at if I was in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, thank you for that sharing with our audience. So, and of course, one other thing, if you could add, is what sets knowledge was uniquely apart from the other products which are already there. There are a lot of COTS product in the market. For example, Salesforce, we have enterprise AI
For
also
sure.
enabled on multiple domains in Salesforce, whether it is HRs or sales campaigns or cross domain enterprise AI agents work very well as well. So, what is it about knowledge was that sets it apart?
Okay, this is a great question. I mean, in addition to Salesforce, you could even add like Databricks or Snowflake. They
Mhm.
all do the stuff, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it is like the market is so big. If you go broader, you have like the hyperscalers and the frontier models. Everybody is looking for the piece of pie. The good thing, which I believe, is the market is so big that there is opportunity for everybody to exist and grab some portion of the pie. So,
Mhm.
what sets knowledge workers apart from a lot of companies out there? One, the fundamental way in which we look at the entire problem. We are looking at an ecosystem. We're not looking at just one problem, point to point solution, right? If you have a point to point solution, you're going to end up as a feature in one of the hyperscalers or one of the frontier models. And with their distribution network sales, you're never going to exist, right? For us, we don't compete with them. We kind of like, we build a bridge for them to operate better. So what we are good at is figuring out use cases and letting people solve because this is where larger tech companies are never going to come in and venture, right? You will never have Salesforce going ahead and deploying forward deployment engineers to solve your problems. That's not going to happen. So what we are doing is essentially letting larger enterprises figure out problems and solve on one particular platform, which could be used by the entire organization or at least those people working on similar type of problems. So you start small and you expand. Everything happens under the same umbrella. So that's where we are. And as I previously said, the secret sauce remains context, memory, and optimization.
Right.
And that's what separates us from everybody else out there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And you explained that secret sauce pretty well, Vijay, where certain things you can pre-process. So kudos on kind of with your background in architecting and as well as using the best LLM models to leverage the use cases of your clients. So moving on to as AI adoption matures, right? What is one shift in data, decision making, or scale that you believe will define the next phase of enterprise AI leadership?
So this is a very good question, right? Like one thing which I feel is now previously we relied a lot on the data being prepared so much in order to get certain kinds of insights because we were gearing towards getting insights in certain way. So what I'm seeing is we all had a very static thinking, right? For this input, you need to produce this output, right? We all had this static and a linear perspective on any workflows, data workflow, right? Now I'm seeing this change a lot, right? Because you are able to look at the unknown unknowns simply because the speed and the scale at which the data is being processed and it's humanly impossible for us to comprehend, right? I mean, that's why the large language models will always beat the humans at speed and scale. Of course, may not be at vision as of now, at least, right? I mean, setting of the vision. So, what I would say is let the LLMs or other AI techniques work for you so that you understand how the intricacies work and then tweak your strategy. You do not go by the old method of, okay, here is my static approach. How do I fix an AI? Now you're force fitting AI. AI, you need to have a little more dynamic thinking. Unless you have that open mindedness on figuring out what new can be done, you cannot. And nobody out here is going to be able to guess and tell which is the best method or strategy because you are going to be operating in the unknown territory, right? So, for which some discovery, some patience, and then the clarity which you are going to develop might help you go to the next step.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for that, Vijay. So, this has been a very deep, insightful conversation. So, thank you for sharing both the wins and the realities and walking us through some of those architectural layers of the LLMs. So, if people need to reach out to you, what is the best way to contact you, Vijay?
They are welcome to reach out to me on my email ID. I respond to them, everybody, in under a day's time. It will be very easy. V as in Victor, R as in Roger, N as in November, at the rate k-v.ai. So reach out to me. I'm always willing to answer at the earliest.
Yeah. And we'll drop that information as well in the description and
Absolutely.
as well as your LinkedIn profile as well. So,
Absolutely. People are more than welcome to reach out, ask any questions, happy to answer. Absolutely no strings attached from my side. I'm here to help.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Vijay. And good luck with your endeavors.
And thank you so much, Malti, once more for having me over. I wish you and your business the same. And thank you so much for doing this. The community will really appreciate it. Thank you once more for doing this.
Thank you very much, Vijay.
Thank you. Bye bye.